Thanks everybody for sitting in. There's a few people here that, so Ron was involved in Storm way back when. In fact, Ron was responsible for Storm as part of international data casting. So Ron Clifton, welcome as a guest. We appreciate you dropping in to take a look at this. What we're doing is we're doing a webinar series for our customers where we're looking at different technologies that we think might affect them. And Wi-Fi, what we thought was a universal piece that lots of people would want. So we thought we'd start with Wi-Fi. For the customers, this is the beginning of the series. So Wi-Fi is up first. On November 30th, we have a fellow who's done 3,000 websites for SEO since 1998. He's got a team of 23, and he's sitting in to take people through a little bit about SEO, search engine optimization, and how it works. We're going to do some work on backup and recovery, and chat about resilience. That'll be December 7th. In January, we'll do some things on point-to-point links, and then notes from the Network Operations Center. So those are all things that we're planning on doing as part of the series. There's going to be 24 of them. Some of them will repeat, and we'll add more detail in some of those as well. So for those of you who don't know, Storm has been serving the Ottawa Valley for about 27 years at this point. We started in 1996. The offices are in Ottawa, Perth, and Chesterville. We provide high-speed internet, and that means we have the ability to project wireless at up to 3 gigs. We have the whole thing ranges in speeds depending on what the application is. And we have our own fixed wireless network, or FWA, fixed wireless access across the area. We're currently at about 262 towers, so that's quite a few towers, and that helps us with being able to deliver signal to people all over the region. We're also doing TPIA, which stands for Third-Party Internet Access Resale. So we resell DSL, cable, and fiber across the region. And in fact, we have people who have offices in other places like Winnipeg, where we'll actually give them the Ottawa node as well as the Winnipeg node. We'll sell both. Through our group, we have local customer service, and currently we're running at about 10,000 customers, with 9,000 being residential and about 1,000 being commercial. So we're trying to grow our commercial as well as our res, but we're trying to grow our commercial pretty quickly. We currently run about 50 employees. During the summer, we add more because we do builds and we need people to help with those builds and help in the warehouse and things like that, and cover for summer vacations. This is our headquarters building at 1760 Courtwood Crescent, which is just off the Maitland-Maryville exit, in case you didn't know. This is our footprint across the Ottawa Valley. We actually go from Charlotte Lake, which is over on the left-hand side, rather, and we go all the way over to the right-hand side, which is the Quebec border, where we have two 200-foot towers in North Lancaster and Baynesville. And those are running newer equipment. It's our first site that has 100 down and 20 up. So that gives pretty good service to anybody who needs things. The same tower, however, could support gig access if somebody there had a factory and wanted to have a gig coming into the factory or more. We could actually push more into that with a point-to-point. So we've color-coded things so all the red dots are at least 5010. They do a lot of different things for different customers. Like I said, 9,000 res and 1,000 commercial customers. A big part of it is the expenditure we have. We also work with our community. Storm is local. We work with Blues Fest. We work with Kempo Live. We support Hope Volleyball. We support a whole whack of country fairs, including Chesterville and South Mountain. We've done a lot of work on the LRT. So we actually currently support over 10 sites with the light rail construction in Ottawa, where we actually do point-to-point wireless, which saves them from having to wait for a fiber to arrive at their construction location, which sometimes might have taken 7 or 8 months. And instead, we can just take one of our antennas and add a link directly to that site and then move it as the trailer moves down. Because the trailers do things like updated drawings, time cards, and provide a place for cameras to be based for occupational health and safety, and also to prevent theft. So we provide that at every location where they want it. We're about 150 smart farms in the rural areas. We do a lot of campgrounds and marinas. We do manufacturing, logistics, and a whack of things for tourism. So, like the plowing match is one of the things that brings people to Eastern Ontario, and we've been the backbone of delivering internet to those sites for the last bunch of years. So today we're going to talk about Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi actually has its own website. It's based on an IEEE standard, which is 802.11. But it turns out that 802.11 isn't enough to actually identify what standard your radio might be working on. It actually turns out we're not going to do Wi-Fi 1, 2, and 3. We're going to start at 4. So 4 was twin bands, and they started at 24 down and 5 as well. So 2 different bands, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. 5 was faster, but only did the 5 gigahertz band. And notice the letters changed, so here they're AC. The AX got you 2.4 plus 5 in the same router and higher speeds. 6E was the new thing with even higher speeds. And then we get this new thing called Wi-Fi 7. So Wi-Fi 7 doesn't actually exist. Wi-Fi 7 is a spec that's underway and is expected to actually settle down over the next couple of months. So sometime in 2024, they expect to publish the Wi-Fi 7 spec. And we'll talk about that along the way. But there's more than just this in development. And so you see that once we get into this kind of thing, it takes a while for new versions to come out. But what happens is the maximum link rate speed in megabits per second goes up every time. So you used to get, in the very beginning, it was 1 to 2. Then it moved to 6 to, the Wi-Fi 3 was 6 to 24. Then you get into 72 megs, 600 megs, and so on. So they've done some real serious work with the new higher speed things. But what people need to realize is your mileage may vary, and it may vary greatly, it turns out. As a matter of fact, here's Tom's guy did a benchmark between 2 TP-Link products. One's the 6E and one's the 7. And you notice at 15 feet from the router, and not everything in your house is going to be 15 feet from your router. But at 15 feet from your router, you go 36 gigabits per second. But when we get down to 90 feet from the router, which certainly can happen in many houses, you're at 42.6 megabits per second. And if you were running the old standard, which is the 6, you actually get 51.1. So it has better penetration at distance than the other one does. So people need to realize just because a router is advertised at a particular speed, there are a number of things that affect it. Among things are things like walls, because they get in the way. Another thing is interference from things like you might have a microwave that somebody turns on. You also have issues with that could change the speed when people are actually, many people are connected to the same access point. So all of these things affect things, and that's kind of important. So we use commercial grade devices. We sell them. They allow us to be able to support more people. They allow us to have more robust distance and a few other things. So new 3-letter acronyms. How many people have heard of MIMO before, which is multi-in, multi-out? That's the latest kind of thing people are doing. And MU MIMO is multi-user MIMO. And it allows a device to have multiple inputs and multiple outputs happening to it. And when you get to Wi-Fi 7, you actually get to do what I would call bonded bands. You can actually bond the 2.4, the 5, and the 6 all together to get a very large path to shoot data between 2 Wi-Fi 7 devices. And while it's backward compatible to allow 2.4 and 5 with the older things, to get all 3 bonded, you actually need to have a Wi-Fi 7 device. And one of the nice things is in the beamforming area, it actually does signal to noise processing. So it actually knows when somebody turns on a microwave, or it turns out that those really nice Wi-Fi lights that you can control, they turn out to be a huge interference in most buildings. So if you want to put them in, you might want to think about how many of your neighbors are you going to piss off because you've actually got Wi-Fi interference happening from those lights. And a lot of this stuff works on time division duplex. So there's a time slot for each device that's connected to the access point. And so if there's 50 devices, then there's 50 time slots. If there's only 2 devices, then there's only two time slots. And so you get things to go faster if there's less people. It's just generally the same as anything else if there's lots of people working on it. Interestingly enough, there are 5 more standards listed here that people are working through. So as an example, how about 802.11ad, which gets you a throughput of 6.7 gigabits, but only for 3.3 meters or 11 feet. So, nice standard, apparently designed for factories and perhaps down the side of the street for autonomous vehicles in robo-taxi zones. But 11 feet's only 11 feet. So anyway, there's lots of different things. There's the next generation is going to be this AY stuff, which uses 60 gigahertz, which lets you push 60 gigabits per second, so you get increased range and reliability from using that. If you have an access point, you generally speaking see it when you go in to look at Wi-Fi, and the SSID shows what the actual name is, or you can decide not to transmit it. So you can actually have an SSID called Fred's Place, but don't transmit it. So you actually have to know you want to connect to Fred's Place when you go to connect. Nobody sees it. It's a hidden network. You should always change the defaults that come with the router. So you should always change it so for instance, probably still 60% of all the routers get hacked because people leave it with the admin password being admin and the admin user being admin. So admin breaks into so many routers that you actually need to make sure that you do change it, please. The other part is you don't have to give people who come to visit you your guest network. In fact, some of the routers out there now do multiple guest network. You can use them for guests and you can also use them for non-priority devices. So for instance, do you really need your smartwatch to be operating and polling at the same time as you're working on your video presentation with somebody, or perhaps doing some other, because the camera's there and all kinds of things when you're doing a video presentation. So the question becomes, what are the non-priority devices that could be put off to the side, and you can give it a lower priority for getting its request filled. So you're not really sharing with that piece of the network. And it turns out that most of the routers on the market have an access list by MAC address. So if you don't want somebody to be able to get into your stuff, or you explicitly do want them, you can either add or block by MAC address, and most of that's inside the routers, which is why we have professionals in our team that actually configure these before we send them out to customers, just to make sure that they're all good stuff. So there's lots of different things that happen on security. So we do have a number of ways to do this. And then there's a question about VPNs. And I know that we had a question about VPNs. If it has HTTPS, then it actually goes into secure mode, and that is actually encrypted between the two devices. And that's you just have to look at the URL to make sure that it actually has that kind of thing, so that you know that. And these parental controls can be used for your business as well. So you can restrict users by device, time of day, and it could be that you don't want somebody going to certain websites during the day. So you may think that Facebook's not a great idea, although you make sure your social media team can still get there. But you might end up deciding that for most people, they can't get access to Facebook except during lunch hour or something. So you can restrict buying online. As an example, you could say nobody can go to Amazon during the daytime, and restrict in-game purchases. That's really handy if you have kids or grandkids that might actually already have a credit card on the account, so that you don't end up with a bill that's kind of a surprise for you. So speeds and ranges. You've got a number of different speeds. The newest ones are pushing 200 megabits per second for up to 300 feet. So that's pretty big speeds compared to where it was when it first started, because you remember it was ones and twos. Some of the questions that you have to have when you're designing the access in a building is, how many devices are there going to be in the building? And remember, it's not just the laptops that your employees are using, it's their smartwatch, it's their tablet that they also brought. It's that second cell phone that they also brought. And then the question is, how many can connect to an access point? Many access points are restricted to just 30 devices. So if you have a lot of people and devices, you need to have more access points to spread the load. And and then on top of that, the placement where you put that access point counts as well, because that gives you better signal to various areas in the building. We actually go out and do work to show people how we can do internet. And this is our event trailer. This one happens to be at Kempville Live. We helped them set up the Wi-Fi for part of the site, and then we took a look at what was going on. Well, it turns out there's a bunch of people that are connected, and you notice this is a Wi-Fi analyzer. So we use these regularly when we're taking a look at a site to see what frequencies are available, and see what channels people are using, and to try and organize things so they work well. And so here we have the actual different device names that are connected, and then what happens is you take a look at those and you see how they spread out across the channels. So you'll see there's a lot of them on channel 1, 2, and 3, a lot of devices on that, and then less so on channel 9, 10, 11. So it's useful for you to know that, because you can actually set up a device so that it starts on channel 11 if you wanted to. And those kinds of things can give you more bandwidth. And then what happens is it actually rates, the Wi-Fi analyzer actually rates the different devices and how well they're doing. And you can see there's green and yellow, so it's a traffic light. There's green and yellow here, showing what kind of detail they're getting, what channel they're on, all those kinds of things. And one of the menus shows you the access point count, so how many people are on that particular channel. And you can see there's a bunch with ones, but there's channel 3, which has 7 on it. So interestingly enough, that helps you figure out where you want to configure your devices. And some of it can be configured. Some of the newer ones can actually configure themselves to head towards lower contention channels, which is a handy feature of the new devices. So it is a shared resource. The access points seem to come in 32, 64, 128, and 256. The professional grade ones would be 128 and 256. You have to think about what kind of traffic will get generated in the building. So do you have cameras for your security? Is it running compressed? Is it running H263? Are you streaming TVs? Netflix is an interesting thing because they optimize for the capacity available. And then we get a lot of people that have realized they don't actually need 8K, even though they may have an 8K device, because 8K technically takes about 64 megs down, whereas 16 megs is the capacity required for 4K, and of course 1080p is a lesser footprint as well. Are you doing lots of texting in your building? Is there lots of email going on? Are there lots of device updates going on? So one of the things that takes place in the background, although you can actually configure your phone not to do it, is things update. So all kinds of different applications update themselves and wait for you to reboot your phone before they go in and put themselves in place. On your network, you might be doing printing. You might have some sensors, and some of the sensors poll. So every second it goes and talks to each of the sensors, and other ones wait till it's got 500 transactions and then forward them all at once. So there'll be a burst and then it's done. The things that we talked about before, there's walls to get in the way. There's various kinds of electrical interference. So phones, lighting, microwaves, those all get in your way. And the internet connection that actually supports your router or your access point is important. So for instance, even though the router you bought might be capable of doing a gig, if you only have a 25 meg by 25 meg internet access point, internet feed, then you can never get more than 25 megs because that's what you have coming into the building. although within the building, if you were actually pushing stuff to a printer, you might get the gig, but it's only because it's going from your desktop off to the printer by itself. So those are the things people need to think about, is how much internet do I need at any given time, and what does it actually take to support the applications that are running on all of our staff's desktops. And don't forget visitors, because the visitors also take part of this. So when your auditors are in, who knows what happens. Everybody's done a speed test at one time or another, but most people do them wirelessly, which is not the way to actually understand what the speed really is. If you really want a speed test to work, you actually have to go and take like a cable and plug it into the back of the router. And then what that does is it means it's going from device to device, and there is no loss of signal as you do your wireless to the router. So that way you can get there. There are known apps. So Okla is one of the ones that people use for speed testing. So there are things that help with that. And speed always has two parameters. The first one is always the down speed. The second one is the up speed. So 5010 is something that we've been rolling out for the last 3 years across our network, and now we're rolling out 120, so 100 down, 20 up. So those are the kinds of things that we've been working on for that. I think we already talked about that. So want to play videos in HDR, you need 16 to 25 megabits per second to meet the 4K standard. Smart offices and smart homes are going to need things. So recently I went out shopping for a dishwasher, and one of the things that I discovered is that several of the dishwashers had an option for being Wi-Fi connected, to which I said, why? So it turned out that there was a reason for that. That was just to allow people to go ahead and work with giving you preemptive help if your dishwasher started acting up. The factory would know that there was an issue, and they could get somebody to get hold of you and say, oh, by the way, thank you for registering your dishwasher. We see that there's an issue with the pump. We can send a service guy up. They also wanted to help you with how many times did you run, so I can order you new soap or new rinse agent, which I thought was a little bit self-serving for them. But hey, maybe you're going to order on Amazon anyway, so why not let it be all automatic? So Nest and Ring, fridges, dishwashers, and lights are all things in a smart home nowadays. They all take bandwidth. So those are the kinds of things that people look at. We end up with looking at how you actually connect all your devices, and so you might take a look at how you're connecting your PCs, your printers, your TVs. Do you have DVD players and so on? If you're doing them Bluetooth or wireless, especially if they're wireless through an access point, you want to think about that. Your router needs to support your internet connection. So it turned out, as we rolled out, so we did Clayton Lake recently, where we took Clayton Lake and we added in the ability for people to get a GPON or gigabit passive optical network to their house. So we have a bunch of houses and businesses connected up around Clayton Lake on our fiber plant. And some people brought their own router and discovered that their router didn't actually support the speeds that were available from us. So it's one thing to consider. Some of the newer routers have 1 gig, 2 gig, 2.5 gigs, and 5 gig, and even 10 gig ports, because eventually those kinds of back-end speeds are going to be available. And in fact, we can make them commercially available. If a customer really needs to get that kind of speed, we can arrange for a custom fiber solution to come to them and provide that. There's a lot of work that's been going on meshing that allows you to have a prime router, and then as people walk through the building, they transfer between secondary routers that are connected with the same name, and it means that you can have a smooth, continuous connection as you walk through the building, and that can be handy for people. And then where you put your router does count. So if your router ends up in your basement, how do the people on the second floor get connected? That's always one of my favorite questions. So smart buildings and offices. It turns out that if you get a buildings management system, you can actually save up to 50%, especially on the HVAC side. So the way that you handle watering your lawn, the way that you handle the things that you do with your heating and lighting, all of that can be automated, and so that can save you a lot of energy. Different ways of hooking things up in your building. Are you Cat 5? Are you Cat 6? Are you fiber? Or are you running wireless? Those are all questions when somebody's looking at building management systems. And of course, nowadays, people do a lot of video conferencing. So if you're going to have 5 or 6 rooms with video conferencing in it, you need to be thinking about, do you have enough bandwidth to support them all going at the same time? And then, of course, the new building management systems actually have interfaces to different kinds of systems. So you get one pane of glass helping manage everything. And all of this is going to rely on internet, especially Wi-Fi, which is something that we see people evolving to in a lot of places. We hope to be helping some customers with some smart building systems over the next 5 years. Any Q&A?
Address it in a couple of things. So first of all, when packets are being sent from your Wi-Fi router, did I understand you saying that the packets can simultaneously be split up between different bands, between like 9, 11, and so on?
So are you on Wi-Fi 7, are you talking about, where it would actually bond the 3 frequencies?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's actually, there are some routers out now that will do that. They're very expensive. Some of them are like $1,500.
Right.
So it's really, even for a business, and also the devices on the other end, your phone, your laptop may not know about Wi-Fi 7 yet. It's still early days, but there are some places that are experimenting with them to try and figure that out. But basically, it figures out what kind of bandwidth it's going to need, and it actually decides to bond the 3 frequencies. Now it shares them, though, each of those frequencies with other people. It's just smart enough to help a large stream take a chunk of bandwidth across all 3 frequencies.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Thanks for the question. Any other questions? All right, I get to ask questions. Was this useful for you? Is this the kind of thing you want to know more about?
Well, me again, Birgit. Gabriel here. I thought I pretty much knew about my Wi-Fi in the house. I've been using it for like over 20 years, but I did learn some things from today's session. So as the technology keeps changing and we all try to keep up, I've had one of the big outfits digging fiber down my street this week, but I've learned I can't use it. So lots of investment going on for no purpose. And I'm interested in the fastest internet I can have, the best internet, like a lot of users. I've got kids doing gaming. I've got Netflix. I've got printer, and lots of smart devices all around the house. So I found your information this morning actually quite informative and useful, and thanks for sharing.
No problem. We're planning on sharing a lot of different topics over the time. And part of what we also intend to do is help some people out with letting them pick the topics that they'd like to see in these webinars. And Mr. Glauca has his hand up. Okay, we'll take Ron Clifton.
Hi, Birgit. Yeah, that was a good presentation, nice and crisp. And I found it was both. I learned a few new things. Like the other gentleman said, we've been using the Wi-Fi for years. We sort of self-taught ourselves. There's a couple things there I didn't know, and then it's a refresher on some other things. So it was good. Nice and crisp, not too long.
All right, that's the idea. We want to bring it in under 45 minutes, allow a bunch of time for questions, and let people actually chat with us about these kinds of things. So that's our objective. It's the beginning of a webinar series. Part of what we'll be talking about in January is we're going to push our NOC to 24/7. So people who would like to get 24/7 support will have that as an option. And we'll even do some stuff. We'll do a session on resilience where we talk about, we could even do spares for your devices at your place so that we can roll a truck straight to your place rather than via the warehouse. So those kinds of things as well, just to get people used to the idea that they can actually do a minimization of their mean time to recovery of operations. So when there is a bump in the night or a bump in the day, we can actually try to bring them back on, and doing things like the simple things like, what are all the devices that need to have a UPS on them? How long does that UPS have to last to keep your business alive? You know, what are the essential ones and what are the other ones? And don't forget to put your router on that, because whatever your access point is from the fiber that comes in off the street, or in our case, we have a lot of wireless, whatever that access point is, you don't want your router going down. So you're going to add a UPS to support the router. And if your business is really, if you think about what it's going to cost you for every hour of downtime, and you pick the best time, if there is a best time for being out, or worst time, you can actually come up with an average of what it's going to cost you per hour, and then start thinking of that as the insurance against the outage. And so we're looking at helping people through the process of thinking about this. It turns out there's insurance credits if you've actually thought this through and done a disaster recovery business continuity plan. There's insurance credits against your business, and so we would be happy to help you come up with a design that will help robust support for your devices in your building. Did that fully answer your question, Ron?
Did I have a question? I don't know.
Okay.
I made a statement, but no, I thought it was, yeah, I think this is.
Yeah, anyway, it's the beginning. You know, we're going to do this, and it's going to be regular. That's one of the big things is, you know, making sure that we're in front of people, and making sure that it's, you know, the kinds of topics people want. Has anybody got a topic that they haven't heard me mention yet that they'd like to see, so we can add it to the agenda and flesh it out a little more?
Maybe a little bit on security would be good as well.
Yeah, I think so, Jerry. You know, we are actually having guest speakers
Right.
From time to time. So my next speaker is on the 30th of November. We're going to have a session on SEO, and the gentleman has actually done 3,000 websites since he started in 1998, and he specializes in SEO. He has a team of 23 of them, and probably while having a chat with him when that's happening.
Excellent. That's good.
And Jerry, you know a little bit about security, so maybe we'll talk about what would make sense for. We're not generally, although we may have some agencies. In general, we're commercial grade, not military grade. So
Yeah.
maybe you have a commercial grade security you'd like to talk about when we could arrange for that.
I'd be glad to. That'd be excellent. Thank you.
And Mr. Clifton, you're back again. Your hand's up.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say a good high-level cybersecurity webinar would be good, I think, for SMEs in high tech. It's things like simple, the NIST and the Center for Internet Security can be tailored for commercial and small businesses, and small businesses don't have the resources. So it's more about understanding them and having a policy in place and risk management, and you're inching towards to a better posture, subject to your own budget constraints, but at least you're doing something. And more importantly, management and the board are protected. If you do have an incident, you say, I have a process, I put paces in place, the best of my budget that I can do, because I got to feed my family, and away you go. So I think a good session like that doesn't have to get into the nitty. You know, you can always come back later with Fortinet or somebody, give you some nice detailed one, but a high level one would be good.
Yeah, we definitely could do something like that. And also, it turns out that that the people from CSIS will actually provide checklists and things like that. So we could probably get a speaker out of them as well as a checklist, and have them present the small business version of their pattern. So I think that would be a good session we could work on.
Yeah, the Cyber Center people would be happy to do that.
Yep. So we could definitely do something along those lines. I think that way more people would learn more about. There's some very basic things that people can do, and We also know that when we go to build the knock, well, we already have a knock. When we go to build it to 24/7, one of the things we expect is that part of what we'll do is we'll do a survey of all the equipment and, you know, things like what ports have you left open, stuff like that, which would be helpful, I think, to some of our smaller customers, because they may not understand that if you leave these ports open and available to anybody to do port walking or come in and grab the port, I think that's an issue. So that's one of the things that we're definitely looking at.
Excellent.
Yeah, along with keeping track of your latest stuff so we know how to bring you back when something does go bump in the night. So in case you didn't know, we can do Wi-Fi surveys. So if you're designing access to your premises and you'd like some help, we can actually provide a design. So we have Wi-Fi designers who will we can put a quote together and come in and we can also provision and configure the access points and cameras and things like that if people need them, and we can get that design set so that you're all set to go. So if you feel you need better Wi-Fi, you can just drop us a note at info@storm.ca. That'll work. So I just wanted to say thank you for becoming part of our Storm community. We're really serious about this webinar series. It'll help grow our business, which means we're serving more customers in more ways, which gives us more options for things we can provide and talent that we can hire. And we'd just like to know how we can help you, and which in turn helps all of us grow. So next webinar, November 30th, it's on SEO, and the slide deck is already present. So there you go. Any other questions?
Thank you, Burkett.
You're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate you dropping in.
Thank you, Burkett.
You're welcome, Gabriel.